Signal. Well, yeah, exactly. Got it.
Okay.
Awesome.
Sounds good. All right. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to the Bay Vibes, Jay. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's great to be back. Had a lot of fond memories here. Glad to be back.
Good to
Love
see
to see you. You're just very
Thank
very
you very much. I
handsomely.
tried to match the vibe today with you.
Definitely matches the vibe. I love it. I love it.
So I hope we're gonna get some productive conversations today.
Yes, sir. I'm excited.
It's interesting, like with this kind of close, what kind of conversations usually go? It could go either way, right?
It does. I mean, look, I'm excited. We got the ties going. We got our suits. You know, you've got. I mean, this is great. I'm excited. I'm super pumped.
Sounds good. So before we had 2 episodes with Jay, was mainly Jay and William episodes, but I kind of wanted to talk to you personally and get to know you a little bit better, because we never like officially, how do you say, like introduce you to our audience, right?
Yeah.
It's it's like, you know, in the movies, you don't necessarily start from the beginning and tell everybody everything. Sometimes you tell some part of the story and then you take people back and just like establish the character that way.
Yeah, it's like we're Star Wars. We're starting with the original trilogy. We moved on to the sequels, and then we're moving back to the
pretty much.
Yeah,
a non-linear story.
Non-linear, yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Get
sounds
you.
good. So, how about this? Just tell us your story, man. It's interesting.
Yeah. My story. Oh boy, where do I start? So, I come from a city in South India called Vishakhapatnam. That was where I was born. I'm Telugu speaking. My parents are Telugu speaking. Telugu is a native language in South India. And so I grew up about 8 months there as a little baby until my parents moved to Singapore. It's a big bustling city in Singapore. My earliest memories are in Singapore. And Singapore is this beautiful city. It's a beautiful, amazing city. Probably, in my view, the best well-run city on earth. The public transit is amazing. I mean, it really warps your view on how a city is. And when I went to America, I'm like, oh my god, it's so different. So
where did you come the first time?
Yeah. So I spent 9 years in Singapore, and for a variety of reasons, we decided to move to America, and we moved to this little tiny town. We moved from Singapore to this little tiny town in the Northeast called Bar Harbor. It has a few thousand people in it, and it's known as a lobster fishing town. So you think for a second, let's think about Singapore, right? This urban metropolis, right? 80 years ago, it was quite literally, Lee Kuan Yew, the founder of Singapore, called it a swamp, right? He called it a swamp. He called it like it was this invisible part of the Asian world that not even Malaysia wanted. Malaysia kicked us out. Malaysia kicked Singapore out because it didn't want Singapore that much. So Singapore is completely unwanted, and it's essentially this like unwanted part of Asia, and it has no natural resources. It's essentially, it is a poor, deprived area of Asia, and now it's transformed into an urban hub. And you compare that urban metropolis of an island to Bar Harbor, which is an island of itself, but it's completely different. It's lobster fishing, and it's half lobster fishing, and it's half a biological institute. And I kid you not, those are the two major employers on the island. There are lobster fishers, and there are wealthy people that work in biological research. That happened to be my father. So my father came to work in biological research at that island, and half the families were working on that. And it's also a tourist island. It's a tourist city. So it's very attractive for tourists, especially in the summer. There's a lot of very quaint ice cream stores you'll find in Bar Harbor. It's very quaint tourist
Which state is it?
It's in Maine. Sorry, I should have clarified. It's in Maine.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's like if you look at a map of Maine, you're looking at, there's a string of islands. If you look very closely, there's a string of islands dotting the bottom of Maine. My island was one of them. Bar Harbor was on one of them. It was a nice little island called Mount Desert Island. Beautiful island during the summer. During the winter, can get a little cold, but during the summer it's very beautiful. I spent 2 years there. Had a great time. It was there that I really got invested in my childhood passions. the humanities, history, geopolitics, just in general, how humanity has evolved, how we operate, the stories that bind us together. That's something that, gripped me when I was 9, and it's never truly left me. And so I spent 2 years, formative years of my life, in Bar Harbor. And from there, I moved to a sleepy suburb in Connecticut called West Hartford. And so I spent 2 years in West Hartford. And not 2 years. I spent 6 years or so in West Hartford. Most of my teenage years in West Hartford. And it's a sleepy suburban town. When you picture a picturesque suburban America, right? When a foreigner thinks of what does America look like, they think of a row of suburbs, right? Extending on and on forever. That was kind of where I grew up. So it was typical New England suburb, it's a typical New England suburban life. Quiet, nothing too much going on. And then I got an offer to come to Berkeley. And so I got an offer to come to Berkeley, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to go from here, this quiet little town in the suburbs of Connecticut, and I'm going to move all the way to big city, California, right? Bay Area. It's going to be wildly different. And I think the Bay Area experience really changed me. It really impacted how I see the world, because it's so different than anything, and I've touched this before in other podcasts, it's so different than anything else you will see in this world, the Bay Area, for good or bad. It's so different than Singapore. It's so different than my experience. It's so different than Singapore, which is this hustle, like get a job mentality. It's so good. It's so much more different than Maine or Connecticut, which are very sleepy and quiet towns, right? It's a very different vibe and atmosphere. So you really learn a lot from it. And so, I don't know. I've spent the last 4 or 5 years in the Bay Area, and I'm glad to call it home now. I mean, it's a very beautiful place. I love it. Yeah.
What language did you speak when you lived in Singapore?
Yes, good question. So Singapore I spoke English. I spoke a variant of English, and I'll tell you why. So Singapore has officially four distinct languages. Hindi. No, not Hindi. Sorry. Let me restart that. It has Malay, Tamil, and Mandarin, and a fourth one I can't quite catch. It might be English. So there are four different languages in Singapore. Now the problem is, you have all these immigrant communities. Imagine you're an immigrant community immigrating to a country, right? Usually you assimilate. The problem is, in Singapore, the immigrants are the community. There is nothing to assimilate to, right? Like when you go to a market, when you go to a wet market, which is, just for anyone who's at home who's a little confused, a wet market in Singapore is like, instead of here in America, we go to a store and, you'll see everything neatly packaged up, right? You'll see all the meat packaged up. You'll see everything packaged up. In a lot of parts of Asia, especially in Singapore, it's not quite like that. You go outside and there's stores out there and they have everything out. It's like out. They call it wet markets. And you go to these wet markets and you have Chinese immigrants, first-generation Chinese immigrants interacting with first-generation Indian immigrants. And they can't speak their language. They can barely speak English, right? So they come up with this weird dialect of English so everyone can communicate with each other called Singlish, right? And it's very interesting and unique. And so you'll see, it's a very unique situation. You'll see, Chinese immigrants speaking with Indian immigrants, speaking with Malay immigrants, and they're all speaking, none of them can understand each other, but they're speaking this weird dialect of English that's, broken down and simplified enough that all of them can understand it for basic usage, right? And that's what I spoke as a kid. I spoke Singlish, essentially, for lack of a better term. It was a form of English that was broken down, relatively simplified. It wasn't until I came to America that, I really got into books and I really started, speaking, how I currently speak today. When I was in Singapore, I did speak English, but it was a very different form, should I say? I say English.
How many languages can you speak?
Okay, I can speak Telugu and English pretty fluently. Telugu is my native language in South India. I don't know it quite as well as, say, my parents do, but I can read and understand it pretty well. Speaking, there's always that barrier with speaking for most people. I feel like most people speaking is the hardest part of learning a language. Because writing and reading, you can take your time with it. Listening doesn't take as much effort because it's passive, and you can sort of pick up from context clues what's going on. But when you're speaking, you have to do it on the fly, and it always takes a little more effort. It's always the hardest part for fluency. And there, I can do it. I'm just a little more hesitant. Other than that, I speak English. I speak a little bit of Spanish. I won't lie. I'm not going to pretend I'm fluent. That would be doing a disservice. I am not fluent in Spanish. So those are the three languages I can kind of speak.
Remind me, how old were you when you moved to America?
9.
9. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Your English sounds like you've been just here your whole life.
Yeah, I've had some people tell me that. Yeah, I'm not sure when I picked it up. I must have picked it up relatively quickly. I guess just from socializing with friends in America. I didn't really have, Bar Harbor, Maine. It's like 3,000 people, and 99% of them are white. So you're gonna, you talk with the people there. I mean, you're not gonna get many. There's not many opportunities for me to stick in a bubble, like an Asian bubble, like here. Maybe if I moved to the Bay Area, maybe I would have kept a little bit of that accent. You know what I mean? Because there's so many Asians here, right? But if I moved to 99% white Maine, and it's just I acclimated to the climate there. Yeah.
And you never learned Mandarin?
No, I want to though. It's so fascinating. I want to so badly. Do you know Mandarin?
No, I wish. I mean, it's like it would make sense to learn it, right?
It would make sense, and also it's such an interesting and beautiful language. I know it's so complex to learn. It's so hard, and it would take so much effort. But I always want to do it because it's so different than any other language I've seen. Especially the even Japanese and Korean. I think it's different than that because it's like, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it based off of pictures rather than syllables or sounds or letters like other
Like
languages?
the hieroglyphs?
I don't know, but kind of. I think Chinese. I think Mandarin specifically. It's like each character is a picture. It's almost like a whole word or a sentence. Not a word. It's almost like a whole sentence in and of itself. And that's why if you look at the Chinese keyboards, I don't want to derail it, but just quickly mentioning this, if you look at Chinese keyboards, they actually had a huge problem. How do you incorporate Chinese into keyboards, right? Because when we think about keyboards, we're normally typing in a letter at the time. But Chinese, each character is like a sentence, right? So you have to design it in a way so that you can structure each character differently. That's so weird, right? So what they did instead is they had it as strokes, right? On the Chinese keyboard, you'll see strokes. So there are different strokes you can put down, like strokes of a pen, on a keyboard, on a Chinese keyboard, and that way you can build characters yourself. Sorry, I just wanted to mention
So
that. Yeah.
how does that work? Basically, if you want to build one character with multiple strokes,
Yes.
there's also like a button that kind of indicates that's the character, right?
Yeah. So you'll have the same way we have letters on our keyboard, like QWERTY, Basdofegical, Zuxavilbanum. The same way we have our Roman, iteration of the alphabet. They will have, instead of having the characters, because there's 3,000, thousands and thousands of characters. There's no way you're going to get all of that on a keyboard. God forbid, right? Instead of that, they have the basic building blocks of characters laid out.
That makes sense.
All right? On a keyboard, like the strokes you do. And using those strokes, I'm sure there's a way they can directionalize it so that you can have the stroke at a certain angle rather than another angle. And that way you can build the characters yourself. And that's so cool. That was like such an interesting idea when I heard of it. I was like, wow. So yeah, I do want to learn Chinese. That's so interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Never thought about this, by the way. I'm just thinking, like, whenever you type, like, for instance, you need to type multiple letters or like multiple sentences, right?
Yeah.
So how does one hieroglyph is made, right? So, like, let's say you have multiple strokes. So you did multiple strokes, then you need to press something as, like, that's it.
Yep.
It's like a space thing.
Exactly. Yep.
And then within those spaces, maybe I guess you can do double space or something.
Yeah. I'm sure there's something you could do to differentiate it. Yeah, but that's kind of how they do it. It's super cool. I was like,
whenever you type in, it's not going linear, right?
No, it's not linear.
Like
it's going like on top of each other, bump,
and then once
on top of each other.
space,
Exactly. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
That's very cool. And then they had to write a different code for that. And like, wow.
I mean, honestly, the code seems like it would be simple after you get the concept. The concept was interesting because, the first people to think about it must have been thinking, oh my God, we have 1 billion plus people in China who are entering the digital age in the 90s and 2000s with Deng Xiaoping's reforms and China coming out of, China coming into the modern world and, the market. And there must have been thinking, we have 1 billion plus customers now. How can we possibly get these people to buy Dell products, to buy Microsoft products, to buy all these products, or even the Chinese versions of these products, right? How can we possibly get these people integrated? Because most of them, I'm going to wager most Chinese people don't know English the same way we don't know Chinese, right? Don't know Mandarin. So how do we get them integrated? How do we build a keyboard that's gonna let these people work without having 3,000 keys, 3,000, 6,000 keys, like there are 3,000, 6,000 characters, and some guy, some woman must have come up with that concept. Super interesting. Yeah.
That's cool. Then you said you lived in Maine, then you lived in New England,
Yeah.
and you developed that passion for humanity,
Yes.
politics, and
Yes.
what else was that?
Humanities, politics, geopolitics, history, just generally how human society operates, how it's structured, how it works. I love analyzing structures. Structures are super interesting to me. If you can give me human structure, if you can give me any kind of structures and ask me to analyze it, that's the stuff I find super cool and interesting. Why a structure is the way it is, how it operates, what are the different components of it, stuff like that.
Give me an example.
An example? Oh, that's so broad. Okay, good, let me think.
An example of a structure that fascinates you.
That fascinates me. Okay. A structure that fascinates me, I think, okay, if we even take how, I don't know, how, let me think about an example. It's such a broad question. Let me think. If I even think, let's say we take, for example, pretty simple example. If we take, for example, economic systems, right? We look at economic systems. The way incentive structures are built in feudalism is significantly different than the way they're built in capitalism or in another system, right? If you like how human relations interact. This another thing. If you think about geopolitics or politics, and you take, let's say, the left wing versus the right wing. I won't harp on this too much. I just bring that up to illustrate the point. If you talk about the left wing versus the right wing, people have certain conceptions in their head of what those are. But in reality, you can almost frame it in your head as, if you think about it, the right wing is preserving. It's almost like the right wing are builders or preservers, right? They build or preserve hierarchies or structures. That's the way the right wing operates. They always look at a fence and they always look at a building, and they always see, how can we build on top of it, or how can we keep it going, right? The left wing, in a sense, almost operates as, and I don't use this derisively at all, as termites, right? And termites have a very important goal in the ecosystem, which is they break down useless or bad buildings, right? If a building's gone bad, termites are going to come in and they're going to break it down, right? And so left wing operates as that. They critique structures, they critique existing buildings. They will look at a building and they'll say, "Hey, something's not right with that. Hey, there's an issue here. Hey, what about this?" You know what I mean? And they will push to ground it down, right? Ground it down. The left wing essentially exists to bring everything to entropy, right? If you think about a structural lens, the left exists to bring everything to entropy. They want everything to be as I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of entropy. Sorry, I should have introduced that.
Entropy, from my understanding, is some sort of an order, right?
It's essentially, it's some kind of order. It's like, if you imagine the end of the universe, entropy is like saying there's going to be no movement at all. Everything is equal. Everything is exactly, there is no movement, there is no action, everything is equal, everything is ordered,
like neutral.
Everything's perfect, neutral. And if you think about it, well, the left side of the political spectrum is always striving to achieve entropy. They want as little movement, everything to be as ordered and equal as possible in an odd sense. And the right wing is trying to fight back against entropy. They're pushing back against entropy, right? And if you think about politics around the lens, the left trying to push for entropy, push to make things push to destroy structures and make things as equal as possible, and the right wing trying to say, "Hey, let's not destroy these structures. Let's keep them. They have an important reason to exist. Let's fight back against entropy." Then a lot of the way politics operates and why conservatives and why liberals think certain ways makes a lot of sense. A lot of people go through life not understanding why they believe the things they do, right? If you ask a left-wing person, "Oh, why do you believe X, Y, Z?" A right-wing person, "Why do you believe X, Y, and Z?" Oftentimes they can't quite articulate it, and that's not bad. I mean, most people are actively involved, but if you understand why they believe those things, if you understand the philosophical motivations behind it, it becomes a lot easier to engage in conversations with people, because it doesn't become, "Oh, that person's evil, this person's evil." It becomes, "Oh, you're just approaching it from a different lens than me. It doesn't mean it's wrong, it's just a different lens," right? So that's the way I like to see it.
Speaking of right wing and left wing, why do you think the humanity evolved in such a way that it's like has the spectrum of right wing and left wing?
That's super interesting. So right wing and left wing are actually pretty modern concepts. So they evolved they came about around 200 to 230 years ago during the French Revolution. So during the French Revolution, there's a famous case where to give us a little bit of background, there's a monarch. There's a French monarch who is overthrown by revolutionaries, right? Because these revolutionaries are angry because this French monarch is concentrating power within himself, and he's not modernizing the country. So they overthrow the monarch, right? And after this revolution occurs, or during this revolution, you have a parliament, right? And you have a parliament similar to many other countries where members who are opposed to the monarch are sat on the left side of the parliament, and members who support the monarchs are sat on the right side of the parliament, right? And so from this French Revolution comes our modern understanding of left and right, where the right is almost defined as conserving the status quo, being opposed to change for one reason or another, saying, hey, let's not tear that down. And the left is saying, hey, that's unjust, that's unfair. We need to tear this structure down and bring things to entropy, bring it to where everyone is equal. And so that's where our modern conception comes from. These concepts have always kind of vaguely existed for thousands of years, but really we see it around the Industrial Revolution, around the French Revolution, when the economy starts picking up and we see all these inequalities start rising. When you see, for example, these rich magnates like Rockefeller and JP Morgan, and you see these rich business magnates start rising with unprecedented hundreds of billions of dollars of wealth in today's money, unprecedented amounts of wealth, where some people are living on literally like 10 cents a week, right? Some people are living on 10 cents a week. And so that level of inequality is what really spurs our modern conception of left and right. Sorry, I'm not sure if that's where you're going with that question.
Yeah. What other types of I don't know what to call those, like ends of spectrum. We have liberalism and conservatism.
Right? Yeah.
Is there anything other, or are we just bound by these two?
Are we just bound? No, I don't think we're bound by them. I think they exist as a function of the way modern political discourse is, but you could have other forms of distinction. I think what happens right now is you can imagine politics, you can imagine political ideology, if you can see it out on the board, almost like a circle. And there's people on all different points, all over the place. But the left and right act as magnets. They pull people to their side. They polarize. And I don't even think pull people, they push people away. So you think about it, the way politics operates, it's not usually like, I believe in this idea. These people believe in my ideas. Let's work together. How does it usually operate? I believe in so and so. I'm on here on the political compass. But look at this magnet. They're repelling me. Look at what they're doing. What they're doing is awful. I'm going to go over to this side. That's the way politics usually operates. It's the way it's operated for the last 200 years. Most people aren't bound together by what they believe, but in a common enemy, what they oppose. So if you think about the left and right as magnets that repel people rather than attracting people, it makes a lot of sense why politics operates the way it does. It's not that we're necessarily like all left wing and right wing. It's that if we have two camps and they're both repelling people, some people are going to get repelled to the left. They're going to say, oh, these right-wing people, they're too much. They're too far. They're doing the X, Y, Z. Right-wing people are going to say, I don't really agree with these guys on everything, but the left's going crazy. They're going too far, right? And that's how you end up with two camps that are partisan, that are tribal, and that are sitting like this, when in reality, political views are all over the map, right? That's the way things work. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's just a function of how we have these organizations and systems in place in our current society that push people away, right? If you're a conservative, if you're someone with mixed views, but you have some conservative leanings, and you see someone on, MSNBC, or you see a pop star talking about some liberal views, you're going to get opposed to that. You're going to say, oh, I'm going to become more conservative as a reaction. Who are you to tell me that, right? If you're a more liberal person and you see something to say the president says or Donald Trump says, and you say, oh, Donald Trump said this. I was more moderate. I had more mixed views, but now Donald Trump said this. I'm going to become more liberal. And that's a function of the way politics operates. It's an opposition. Mm-hmm. It's an opposition. And that's kind of unfortunately why we find ourselves in this situation.
Mm.
Yeah.
Question is there a third way? Or a fourth way?
A third way or a fourth way? I think
as close as it gets to a third way.
Yeah.
Or is it only just the spectrum of these two?
Yeah.
They're just falling in the spectrum.
I don't think that these two are the only way. I think the reason that we see it's almost like have you heard of Plato's Cave? The allegory of Plato's Cave?
Yes.
Yeah. It's almost like the idea of, do you want to, sorry, I've been talking a lot. Do you want to explain it?
No, go for it.
No. So the allegory of Plato's Cave is the idea that you have a group of people that have always lived in this cave, always lived in a cave underneath the ground, and they see shadows from the outside. and they think the shadows are real life, right? But they don't realize there's a whole richness up there, but they're too content to be there. It's all they know. So how can there be anything else? How can there be anything else? This is it. This is all we've ever known. This is all we will ever know. So they rationalize and that's exactly what this is. All we've known in politics for the last 200 years or so as a freak accident of the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution is that these two structures got built up, the left and the right, and they polarize people against each other, right? And so what happens is, because people have always known these structures, like literally you would have to go back hundreds of years to find your ancestors who didn't know these structures, right? Because we have these two structures in society, and they're such big and well-developed structures with huge media apparatuses, huge political influence, huge amounts of cultural sway. Like literally, like you have a term for blue America and red America, right? What is it? When you think of blue America, you think about cosmopolitan, racially mixed a little more, like younger, more diverse, and, they're going out and they're, and when you think of red America, you think small town, rural America, like working on farms, right? And it's an identity thing. Right? When you have that level of cultural depth, right, it becomes part of your identity. It's ingrained, right? It doesn't mean it's unavoidable. It just means these structures are so big and so massive that it's like almost hard to envision life without them. But of course, that's all they are. They're structures. If you think about like everyone's political views, if you think about our world, it is literally just like the circle, with people all over the spectrum, all over the circle, random people with all kinds of views. You can find a conservative, for example, who likes gun rights, but also who also wants environmental laws because they're a hunter. They own guns to hunt animals, and they don't want animals to go extinct. So they're a gun rights conservative who supports environmental laws. Or you can find a liberal who's more liberal, but maybe they have issues with, I don't know, something like affirmative action, right? Maybe they have issues with something like that, or maybe they have issues with maybe they want lower taxes, right? Maybe they're more liberal on social issues. They like gay marriage, they like things like that. But maybe they like lower taxes. Maybe they think that the government's taxing them too much. So you have all this complexity, and it gets polarized into two sides by opposition to the other side. And because it's so ingrained in our society, culturally, that we think it's all there ever is, but it's not. I mean, maybe someday in the future, when we're all in space and, everyone's living in paradise, maybe, hopefully, we'll get out of that and, we'll find new ways of, talking to each other with nuance and curiosity. Curiosity is the thing that both sides hate. Curiosity. Imagine you're curious. You could develop nuance. You could maybe say, hey, maybe my side is not right on all things. Maybe their side is right on some things. And that would be terrible. You need to get attracted to the most extreme ends, right? And so that is how politics functions. It doesn't have to be that way. But unfortunately, structures are so well ingrained that is functionally how it works right now.
All right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. Wow. Let's see.
Threw a lot at you.
Yeah, that was good. I mean, you're good at this.
Oh, thank you. Much
When
appreciated.
you start talking, I'm like, all right, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, I don't know what to talk about now.
You're asking great questions.
Could you explain me what affirmative action is?
Yeah. So affirmative action is. I'll explain it generally, and then I'll explain it from the people that support it and oppose it just very quickly. So affirmative action is coming out of the civil rights era. There were a lot of inequalities from the past 150 years of American society, right? You think about especially for racial minorities, but especially for African Americans, who are always seen as unfortunately, as an outside group in American society, for 150 years through slavery, and then after slavery, when the African American community tried to recover, constantly being suppressed through Jim Crow laws and segregation and being kept down for 150 years, right? Through violence, through intimidation, through being legal property, right? And you think about that for 150 years, that breeds immense poverty, right? You imagine your communities, you aren't even allowed to aspire to basic rungs of society. You aren't allowed to aspire to own a business because it'll get burnt down. How dare these people own a business? That's not their place in society, right? And so you live under that for 150 years. It's going to produce serious disparities in wealth. It's going to produce serious disparities in life outcomes, which was exactly the scenario that African American community found themselves in the 1960s. When the civil rights laws got implemented and segregation ended and we had racial equality by law, it was still not clear that we had racial equality in practice. Because even though it was true that, hey, by law, African Americans have the same rights as white Americans now in the 1960s. You guys are good to go. But it's literally like whipping somebody 50 times and then like giving the other person like a gourmet meal and then saying, okay, now both of you run a race. You're both equal now. I'm going to stop whipping you. I'm going to stop giving you a gourmet meal. Now go run a race, right? It's still probable that the person with the gourmet meal does better than the guy that got whipped 50 times, even if they stopped whipping him, right? And so that's kind of the mentality. So the idea is, how do we get it? Okay, from one side of the aisle, how do we get it so that we can redress that, so that we can mitigate those consequences and make it so that people who are in the lower strata of society get brought up and are able to achieve the opportunities they're supposed to have. And the idea behind that is, and everyone wants this, but the technique they use, the technique that supporters of affirmative action use, is the idea is you use some level. I don't know many affirmative action supporters who claim, they want this to be the end-all, be-all. But what they'll say is you use it as a factor when making decisions about hiring, about college education, things like that. Like if you see someone from a poorer, minority neighborhood, you might say, okay, they had to work harder and they had to work in worse circumstances to get to where they are. This should be given additional consideration compared to someone who is a more affluent, maybe more white neighborhood, right? And obviously, I mean, you can see the justification for that, right? Which is, someone in the worst neighborhood has to work way harder to get where they are. So all else being equal, if they're both equal, then the person in the worst environment should get an edge. That's the idea that supporters of affirmative action will say. Now, opponents will say, hey, wait a second, let's take a bigger picture. You guys are getting way down the needs here. Let's look at what you're justifying. What you're justifying, essentially, is racial discrimination. And you're getting all in the weeds. You're getting all in the weeds here. Well, you see, actually, if you look at the history, according to the statistics, and you're getting all in the weeds to justify what is actually an abhorrent policy, is what they would say, right? A policy of racial discrimination, right? And what they would say is you're breeding the racial resentment that you're trying to solve. You're causing issues. You're causing racial issues that you're trying to solve. And maybe even some of them will say, yes, the issues you point out are valid, but there are better ways of solving them. Maybe they'll bring up something like providing better funding to disadvantaged school areas early on, so that the areas improve. Maybe, I don't know, like providing better tax credits to these areas, things that would help improve the quality of life in these poor, disadvantaged areas, without making it a decision point on a racial basis in hiring decisions, in college admissions decisions, things like that. And other people will just say, hey, look, we have racial equality now. Let's get over it. Why are we bringing up race? And so that's kind of the conversation on both sides. One side is kind of getting into the weeds and they're saying, because of these reasons we have to do this. And the other side is saying, hey, wait a second, let's look at the bigger picture, right? What you're doing is wrong. It doesn't matter the reasons why, what you're doing is wrong. And that's kind of the debate behind what's going on there.
When you were growing up, watching the news, reading books, is there a person that you were inspired by, like a politician or like, I don't know, a news anchor or something that?
Politician or a news anchor I was inspired by? Wow, that's a question.
The reason I'm asking is, like, I see you, like, the way you speak, such a passion, such an articulation. It feels like maybe there's like a blueprint that you could have, got it from, or is that natural?
Okay. As much as I don't want to sound vain, I don't have a person I pick it up from. What
No
I
problem.
do, yeah. No. Oh, no. Don't worry about it. That's a very good question. That is a very good question. I that's why I was trying to think. I don't have a particular news figure that I based it off on. I wasn't like practicing as a kid, although that would be perfectly valid. I wasn't practicing as a kid. Oh, I want to speak like, I don't know. I want to speak like the CBS anchor, right? That wasn't quite what I was thinking. It's just a process of, it's the same thing as, honestly, getting exposure to any subject. The more you're exposed to a subject, the better you just... I feel like when they talk about levels of learning, right? When you talk about levels of learning, there's the superficial levels that most people get stuck at, which is recognition. You recognize something. Photosynthesis. Oh, I know. I've heard of photosynthesis before. Yeah, it's like stuff plants do, right? Someone told me that, right? But someone who really studies biology, who's a PhD in biology, would be able to tell you not only what photosynthesis is, they would not only be able to explain it, but they'd be able to understand how, could you apply it in other contexts? Like, is it possible to do research on photosynthesis in such a way that it helps us develop medical cures, for example, right? Can we understand the fundamental underlying principles behind it? Is there like a structure behind it, right? And when you learn about something deep enough, when you love something and you learn about something deep enough, it starts coming to you that you start seeing structures and patterns, right? For example, in chess players, people ask, "Oh, chess players, these guys are geniuses. How do they do this?" And a lot of them are very smart, but they ask, "How are these guys doing this? How are they calculating 50 moves ahead?" They're not really. What they do is for the most part, some of them do, but for the most part, they're calculating patterns. They've seen the chessboard. They've seen these positions so many times that they have patterns in their head, subconscious patterns, where they think, "Oh, I've seen this before. I know how this goes. I know generally the pattern of moves." They've seen it so many times, hundreds, thousands of times, that it develops into patterns in their head. And when you have an understanding of a subject so thorough that you've developed patterns in your head of how it works, that's when you know you've really understood it, right? So, I guess that's where I would say I have my inspiration for. It's just a lot of learning. I just really liked learning about the subject. I just read about it, and I devoured everything I could find on it. I devoured everything I could find in the humanities. And as you start doing that on any subject, I mean, frankly, if you started doing that on anything, we could, yeah, exactly. It's all, I wouldn't even say, I don't think any of it's natural. It all just comes about through exposure. And I would say exposure.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Where do you think you fall in that spectrum?
Interesting. In which spectrum?
In the political spectrum.
That's a very good question. Okay. How do I put this? I want to say this again without sounding vain or like I'm above it all, which I'm not. I'm definitely not above it all.
Question,
okay.
Before we do this, do you have a concrete understanding of where you at, or you kind of find yourself
So I actually go back and forth on issues a lot. I do. So I expose myself to it. Again, I don't want to come across like I'm above it all, because I don't think I'm any better than someone else on some political, spectrum. I think there's a lot of people on the political spectrum that are like, that have very well reasoned explanations and beliefs for what they have. And I've read a lot of them, so I get it. I think there's a lot of really good explanations on a lot of issues, and we can delve into any of them. But I kind of am at a spot, I think, in my early 20s. I think when I was younger, I used to be a lot more like, I would see an issue when I was younger, and I'd be like, "Oh my God, this makes sense. This solves everything. This solves that. This is a theory of the universe. I have found it," right? And I would follow that for 3 months, and then I'd go, "Wait a second, this guy's saying the opposite. Oh, their explanation makes sense," right? And I think when you do that a lot, I think politics is unlike the sciences, because you can, how do I put it? You can have very good arguments and still be wrong. You can have very good arguments and still be wrong, and you can also have very bad arguments and still be right, and it can also be true that no one's right? And so the way I see it is, the way I see it at least is, how do I put this? The way I see it at least is, there's too much nuance that I don't know for me to make assessments on certain issues. Now, if you ask me about a topic, I could tell you the details about it. I could tell you maybe what my leanings are on it. Like affirmative action, I think that there's probably better ways of going about it than affirmative action. And I actually think, and I think a lot of people that have done studies on it would agree, that if you actually looked at the effects of affirmative action, it doesn't produce the results that its supporters claim it does. And in actuality, there's much better ways of supporting the foundation of these minority disadvantaged groups than affirmative action, because if you can raise them at their foundation, that solves a lot of the problems already. Stuff like, early childhood education, early childhood nutrition is really, really important. Having healthy, sorry, I don't want to go on a tangent on this, but having really healthy early childhood experiences is super important. Having the resources and resources in their schools, resources in their communities, right? Building that up first, having job opportunities in their communities, super important, right? A child growing up in inner city Detroit is not going to have same opportunities as, upper middle class kid in, I don't know, Lansing, or in, I don't know, like West Hartford, where I grew up, right? So it's like, bringing opportunities to those communities I think, a far better, way of solving the issue than, just using it as a criteria. I think that's too superficial, too simplistic. Okay. bringing it back, I think I can tell you my leanings on any specific issue. I don't think I could tell you if I align on any specific side, not because I'm better than the people on those side. I'm not going to be snooty and say, "Oh, I understand nuance." These guys on the left and right, they don't understand. I don't think that's true at all. I think people on the left and right are capable of understanding nuance. They just come to different conclusions than me. I just, from my perspective, see so many different perspectives on an issue that it can be hard for me sometimes, for my own flawed judgment, to make a decision. I don't want to think that I have the right opinion on something when I don't understand it. It's like if I were to tell you, I know the meaning of the universe. I've heard so many opinions, I know the meaning of the universe. And you'd be telling me, do you really? I mean, you might have been well read on it, but do you really? And that's kind of the way I feel about a lot of political issues, because I think even if I'm well read on it, I don't know if I don't know if I can say from my flawed judgment that something is 100% the right opinion, or like a side has 100% the right opinion. And I do think the concept of political sides in general is overplayed.
Are you like that on just politics or in general in life?
Interesting question. I think in general, I'm a person that does take into account a lot of inputs. I really like listening to people with different views, even people who completely disagree with what I say, because I think they have something really important and valuable usually to offer. Even people that are offering like crank conspiracy theories or like crank, like stuff like things I totally disagree with, right? Even they have something, like they have a reason for believing why they believe in it. And so I want to know, why do they believe in it, right? And so in general, I tend to be like that. Okay. I think that is me dispositionally, I'm like that.
Would you agree to say that sounds like an agnostic? Like,
I suppose.
I don't 100%.
No, I think that's totally fair.
And same totally way fair. with your political strategy. Yeah. I'm not 100%.
Yeah, totally.
On either side.
Totally.
Right? Okay.
Yep.
Also, would that be fair to say that's more of a centrist approach, or no?
Yeah, I was afraid. I don't want to be labeled as centrist.
Okay.
No, I totally get it. Uh-huh. No, you're right. Uh-huh. So, okay. I can see why you're approaching it from the lens. I think, in my perspective, a centrist is someone who looks at the left and right and says, okay, they're equally valid. Therefore, there's a middle position. Uh-huh. That in itself is a position. I don't actually agree with centrists on a decent amount of issues. I think there's a decent amount of issues where centrists just get it wrong. For example, a centrist I generally, as a general rule of thumb, tend to be anti-war, right? And I know everyone says they're anti-war, but what I mean by that is I say, the justifications that are usually used for warfare are ones that people, even anti-war people, can get drawn into, right? And I'm opposed to war on principle. I think in the vast majority of cases, almost every case in human history, that's a very controversial take. I think wars are unjustified. It's very hard to find a justified war, in my opinion. And so that's one case where centrists will say, what do you mean? That's such an extreme position. Obviously, there are, a bunch of wars that, are kind of justified, right? But I would disagree with the centrists there, right? I guess the way I would describe it is I have views, some on the left, some on the center, some on the right. I have views all over the place. Doesn't make them right. Doesn't make me better than anyone else. It's just the way I am. So I guess an agnostic, honestly, would be the best place to put it. I don't know if I'd call myself a centrist because I don't think I'm in the middle of the road on all the issues.
Do you believe in higher beings?
That is a very good question. My opinion is, again, I don't know, and I don't think anyone knows. My opinion is, I don't think higher beings in the way we conceptualize them currently exist. However, I think it's absolutely possible that being in a higher consciousness, let's say, or a higher dimension, absolutely exists. It's possible that, we could be a simulation in another universe. It's possible that, because we don't know a lot about our universe. We're such intelligent beings. We don't know so much about our universe. We don't know why is our universe expanding at an accelerating rate? It literally should just not be happening, right? But it is, right? And so that's kind of crazy. Like, you think about so many things in the universe where we just don't quite understand what's going on. Would it surprise me if, as we found out more, we found out, oh, there's something else going on in a higher dimension? Wouldn't surprise me. Would it surprise me if I found out we're part of a bigger thing? Wouldn't surprise me. Would it surprise me if I found out that the universe wasn't the only thing that existed out there? Wouldn't surprise me. So I just think we don't know a lot. And because we don't know a lot, I can't say for sure. I don't think, like I said, I don't think gods as we call them now exist. But I think there could be something approaching that kind of thing.
I'm totally on the same page with you on that one. There are things, there are informations, there are things that you could I could maybe emotionally lean into,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, I cannot convincingly say that I, you know or believe in something like 100%.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right,
Because
right.
I don't know.
Right.
I can always accept the fact that maybe it's not like that.
Right.
You know,
Right.
whatever the concept could be.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
And yeah, I'm like that resonated with me when you said
Right,
like
right.
I'm agnostic and it's hard to put yourself in some sort
Yes.
of spectrum.
Yes.
Although I feel like emotionally or like the way you brought up a lot of these, wirings in your brain, a lot of things, a lot of consequences, a lot of choices in your life. Probably you still in your brain lean some way. Probably.
You're 100% right.
Yeah.
I probably do.
Even though you're not 100% convinced,
Yeah.
but there is just like this position you find yourself in.
Sure.
Oh, I find myself in more left-leaning.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I totally get it.
Yeah.
I just think sometimes when I do agree with that, and sometimes I've thought that to myself, oh, like I probably do lean more one way. And then when I think about it, oh, I'm more left-leaning or I'm more right-leaning. Immediately my brain comes up with, well, that side's not quite right on this, or this side's not quite right on that. And it's like,
Okay.
but I totally get you. I probably am wired a certain way, and I'm just not, I don't pretend I'm immune for that at all.
Do you know any political figures that are kind of like famous or important in the game right now that have similar approach?
Interesting. To my approach?
Yeah, no, like the approach of like not centrist, not leaning left, right, or like everybody who's out there playing the game are like you can put them in the spectrum.
Yeah. So the closest you're going to find, there's a couple examples. So the left nowadays is usually pretty. Actually, this is interesting. You can generally tell, and this is going to be controversial. You can generally tell the side that's in power by cultural power, by how regimented and unified their political views are. 40 years ago, during the Reagan era, when Ronald Reagan was in power, it was the right that was very unified, right? You had very few disagreements. If you had any disagreements with the right, you were lumped in with the left, right? So the right had few core beliefs. Anti-communism, right? We are against the Soviet Union 100%. And not just that. We are supporting any side that is fighting the Soviet Union. Doesn't matter what they are, who they are. We're going to support them, and if you oppose that, that means you're siding with the communists. Right? And I'm not saying that as, derision on them. I understand it's a different time, different era, and, I get it, but that's the way it operated, right? And, we support free markets 100%, capitalism 100%. If you want any state of intervention in the economy, let's say you want to help farmers who are struggling because of the farming crisis in the 1980s, then you get lumped in with the left. Even if you don't agree with the left on anything else, you get lumped in, right? So the left, 40 years ago, was this disparate collection of people that didn't agree on much, except that they weren't right-wing. And the right wing were the ones who held certain principles and beliefs. The left were the outgroup. Nowadays, if you look at it, it's actually different. The left is very regimented and united. If you talk to a left-wing person, I can tell you with almost exact predictability what their political views will be. Almost exact. You will find very little. On occasion, you'll find some left-wing people say, well, I agree with the left on everything. It's just, maybe some of this, they'll say maybe some of this woke stuff is going too far. Oh, maybe some of this, maybe they should talk down some of the, social justice talk or something. But they don't disagree with anything fundamental about the political views, right? You get some people who say, okay, maybe we should do communism and socialism instead of having a mixed economy and social democracy. But those are views that fall pretty neatly on the left-wing side of the spectrum. You're not going to get many people on the left who have heterodox views. On the right, on the other hand, there's some views where they're unified. There's mostly unified support for the president, for Trump, right? But if you go a level below that, you have all kinds of views. You have a guy named Tucker Carlson, who is conservative and he's a Trump supporter, but he's very skeptical of Israel. He's very skeptical of, the U.S. military. He's very skeptical of, he's a very, skeptical, questioning guy for good or bad. He questions, he's skeptical of everything. He's, he's asking questions about everything. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's not good, right? And then you have people like Mark Levin, who's also, I know Mark Levin is not going to be a familiar name to most people, but Mark Levin is a guy on Fox News, and he is a Trump supporter, but he loves Israel. And he supports everything Israel does. And he's, very pro-U.S. military. And, how do you have those views reconciled in the same tent? Unless they're both defined as just not being left wing, right? If you define a side as not being the other side, then you can have all kinds of disparate views. But if you define a side by a certain set of political principles or beliefs, I can tell you with almost exact certainty, if I talk to a left-wing person, a person who identifies with the left, what their political beliefs are. I couldn't tell you if I talk to a conservative what their beliefs would be on everything. There are going to be conservatives who say, well, I'm a Trump supporter, but, maybe we should, expand Medicare. Or maybe we should, cut down on these foreign wars. And then maybe some of them say, go with the military. I want the U.S. military to be strong, right? And they'll have all kinds of views there. I don't think you see that diversity of views right now on the political left. With that being said, you asked for political figures, right? The political figures right now you're going to find with heterodox views, I think, are going to be on the right. There's a little bit of that emerging in the left now because they're a little bit out of power and they're a little bit in the wilderness because of the Trump victory. They don't have quite as much power as they used to, but most of it's still going to be on the right. You're going to find a lot of diversity in thought on the right. You're going to find your free market people, and you're going to find your Israel and NATO supporters, and you're going to find your people like Tucker Carlson who just want the U.S. to stay out of all of it, and let's stick to our country and let's focus on America first. And you're going to find some people who want to shut down all immigration. You're going to find some people who say no, immigration's good, let's just shut down the border, right? You're going to find all kinds of reasons. And you're going to find people who have left-wing views within that perspective, right? You're going to find people who say, I support the right on immigration, but I don't quite, I want to expand healthcare too, right? And those views would be considered right-wing, because if you're on the left and you talk about and you have that view, you're going to get kicked out. Right, and that's just how the dynamic goes. And so, those are the kind of people I talk about. I talk about, let's say, for better or for worse, whether you agree with their views or not. People like Tucker Carlson, who has heterodox views. People like Ron Paul is another great example. He's a libertarian, right? And he ran for president at a time when the Republican Party was fully in support of sending U.S. troops to Iraq and Afghanistan. This is after 9/11, and the country was in war fever. And he said, no, guys, this was wrong. Using the U.S. military right now is wrong. And he got a lot of backlash from it, but he was still on the political right? He still believes in free markets and capitalism. He just doesn't believe in sending U.S. troops abroad because he doesn't believe in using the U.S. government, right? Those are the kind of people I talk about, people who might be on one side, but they hold views that are on the other side, right? And you wouldn't expect them to hold. And I don't think you're going to find a lot of that on the left. I think you do find that more on the right now, but I think it can shift within the next 20 years. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, that was a very long-winded response to your question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You told me that there's no justification for a war.
Yeah.
That's
my personal opinion. It's a very controversial opinion.
Yeah. Why? How do people justify the war currently?
Justify wars? So people justify wars all throughout history using... Okay, here's the way I see it. Wars are almost in any consequence, in my view. Wars are the worst thing people can do to each other. I think the best example is you see World War I is the best example in people's minds of a completely senseless war, right? You have young boys, 15, 16-year-olds, dying in trenches because of chemical warfare, because the British Empire said, hey, the German Empire, you can't protect this tiny country in the Balkans, and we have an alliance with them. And it's all these international alliances, and they're going to war because of these international alliances, and millions of young kids are dying, right? And so, for most people, they look at World War I and they see that is the epitome of a senseless war. But most wars don't seem that senseless, right? Most wars are done in the name of something, right? People never justify war in the name of war. Like, you're not going to see people acting like the Greek god Ares going, I love war, let's go kill people. You know what I mean? It's not what you usually see. Most people don't like war. They don't like seeing soldiers die, but they'll say, of course I don't like war, but in this case, these guys are so bad, we have to take them out. In this case, these guys are so bad, look at what they're doing. They attacked us first. Look at what they did. We have to escalate, right? If you don't want to go, and then if you oppose it, it's why are you siding with them? Why are you siding with the bad people, right? Do you support what they did? Right? They don't talk about war itself. They'll talk about the reasons they're going for war. And if you oppose the war itself, then your motives for support for those reasons are questioned. So, for example, let me think of an example. I mean, like a simple example is Iraq. I mean, most people can grasp this. Iraq is classic example. At the time when we went into Iraq, there was an anti-war faction within the country that said, no, we oppose this war, right? Even though 9/11 happened and most of the country was saying, we have to get these guys, we have to get them, we have to, let's glass the Middle East, let's send them all away. There was a faction within the country that was saying, no, war is bad. And their motives were questioned. They weren't questioned on why did you say war is bad. They were questioned on why do you support these bad people that killed us in 9/11? Right? Do you see that? It turns around the question. That's the way propaganda works. Propaganda works when you turn around the question and you don't debate the topic at hand, which is, should we go to war? It is, do you support the motives of the people we're fighting? You oppose war with them? Why do you support bombing? Why do you support the strike on 9/11? Why are you letting those guys off so easy? Do you hold sympathies for them? Are you making excuses for them? And then it becomes that. And then it becomes, no, not quite. And then it becomes a debate about that instead of the question itself. The way war is almost always justified is through that lens. It's justified through propaganda of some sort. It is, these guys are so bad. I know we don't like war. But these guys are so bad, we have to take them out. We have to escalate. We have to do something. And often they'll ignore their side of the story. It becomes a gung-ho, our side is 100% right, their side 100% wrong. We are the civilized people, they are the barbarians. They are the evil people. There is no attempt to understand why they did the things they did. There is no attempt to understand, even if they did a bad thing, why did they do that bad thing? There's no attempt to say, are we 100% good? Have we made mistakes? Right? When you do that, a balancing act, you're accused of supporting everything the other side does. Right? But when you do that balancing act, you realize, hey, wait a second, things aren't quite so clear. You know what I mean? And because things aren't quite so clear, the propaganda that we have saying, we're 100% right and they're 100% wrong. And so because of that, they're so wrong, we have to end them by all means. That propaganda diminishes. And then you start seeing the avenues for, hey, wait a second. We did some wrong things. They did some right things. They did some wrong things. We did some right things. So let's do some diplomacy. Let's work things out, right? Even if we don't like their government right now, let's work things out. Let's not kill human beings and kill their lives for things that aren't worth it, essentially. That's the way I come from it. That's one of my more strongly held positions. So, yeah.
Let's say you're a country. You're a, I don't know, like a leader of a country.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then your country is developing and whatnot.
Sure.
You're gaining power.
Sure.
And then you need resources.
Okay.
Right? And then let's say some other country that neighbors you has those resources. And in order to obtain those resources,
okay,
that could be a justification for a war, right?
Right, but normally, in most circumstances, modern-wise, I know why you bring that up, because recently we've had situations with the president going to Venezuela explicitly for oil. So, I granted there are some reasons, some cases where that happens, but usually war takes place on some moral basis. Usually takes place. These guys, how do you sell war to a population? You can't sell it on, hey guys, we need to send our men to die in a war controlling a country so that we can get their oil. Usually very hard to do that, even if it's true, even if that's what you want. So you have to cover up with moral justifications.
Yeah.
Almost always, if you're selling to population, even if you're an authoritarian leader, how are you going to justify telling mobs, going to their house, saying, I'm drafting your son, let's go to war? For what? For some resources in a country that they don't care about? You have to give them a reason, a moral reason, why, at least for the time being, they should care, even if you live in an authoritarian country. Okay? So in almost any war that has that, it has that dimension, even in the intervention in Venezuela, right? Which I wouldn't classify as a war, it's just a military intervention, but still, even there was a moral dimension, right? Which is, these guys are, awful, evil, authoritarian rulers who have been subjugating their population. Their population wants to be liberated. This is another thing you'll hear. Their population wants to be liberated. They want to be liberated. Why can't we liberate them, right? Well, do you support the dictators over their people, right? That's why we have to go to war. And then if you question the war, do you support the dictators over the people? Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the war isn't the quiet. No, you support the dictators over the people. That's what this is, right? And so it turns the question around. So the way I see it is almost any war is sold to the public as a moral war, as a morally righteous act. And the key thing for people who are opposed to war is to point out why it's actually not that morally righteous, right? To tell people, hey, there's something not quite right here. Hey, maybe those guys might be bad. They're not quite as bad as they're telling you, and we're not quite as good as they're telling you, right? And hey, maybe war isn't the way to solve this. Maybe there are other ways of solving this, right? That's the key thing for anyone who is opposed to war, in my view, is you have to gain a view of the moral dimension that's used to sell the war, and you have to deconstruct it. You have to tell people why that's not quite the case that you're being told, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, I guess I maybe misread the
Oh, okay, no worries.
justification part. It's justification from your perspective, right? Or is it from a perspective of a civilian
Of a society.
society?
Of a society. Because how are you going to sell war to a society? How are you going to sell war to a society? You have to sell war to a society through, I don't want to use the word propaganda because it's very loaded, but you have to use a moral lens. You have to use a moralizing lens. These guys are bad. Our guys are great. Go us. Go us. Go our team.
I understand.
Right? Go our team. And so that's how you sell it to an ordinary person. Because otherwise, how do you justify they have to have rationing? Let's say you have rationing. Let's say you have a draft. Let's say your economic conditions get worse. How do people sustain this on a normal basis if they don't have a moral dimension to cling to? If they don't say, we're doing this for a greater cause? They have to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. War is one of those things that pretty much never stopped.
Never.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's almost part of our fabric.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I think actually I have a more optimistic view of humans than some people. I don't think war is necessarily in our fabric. I think it is a result of the structures that humans have built for themselves. I think that humans are inherently, okay, I wouldn't say inherently, but humans have a lot of aspects to themselves that are actually very voluntary and peaceful. I think as societies, we would prefer, think about being an ordinary person. Like, realistically, do you really want to go fight and die with some other people over things when you can actually just trade with them, right? I have something, let's say our society grows corn, your society grows, your society does carpentry, and you guys make shoes. Why would I go kill you guys normally if we can just exchange and we can both be happy? You get corns and shoes, I get corns and shoes. We're both better off, right? And so you think about that dimension to society. I don't even think humans are all good. I just think we have a trading, cooperative sentiment that's been built and ingrained to us for hundreds of thousands of years that predisposes us to voluntary interaction. Now, with that being said, we also have a tribal element to us. We have a tribal element that says, this is our tribe, this is their tribe, and their tribe is threatening us, so we have to go after them. And I think, to your credit, that's the part you're talking about. I do think, though, that in the long run, how do I put it? I think this tribal element can exist without overrunning our lives, is what I'm saying. I think that if we make sure to understand that this tribal element, it's fine to have it, but as long as we keep it in, as long as we understand where it's coming from and that it can, and that sometimes it can mislead us on what direction we're taking, as long as we understand that, I think it's absolutely possible to have this other element of human nature, which is, you want to make yourself wealthier, you want to trade with other people, you want to cooperate. Humans are a cooperative species. So to have that element more in play, I don't know. I'm not 100% sold on the view that, war is inherent in humanity. I don't think it has to be.
Okay.
I think it's just, sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say maybe the war as a consequence is not inherent, but is greed inherent?
I think in some people, I don't think humans are universalizable on greed. I think it exists on a spectrum. You look at a normal distribution. I don't want to bring this jargon, right? You think about a distribution of human population traits, right? And you get, there's going to be an extreme amount of people that are very greedy, and an extreme amount of people that are very altruistic, and get most people in the middle. I think that's the way I see it, honestly.
Also, it could be like a survival, right? Interpreted certain way.
Yeah, but some people develop survival mechanisms in different ways, right? Some people survive. Maybe their genes get passed on because their ancestors were really nice and friendly, and so as a result, people like being around them, right? In fact, that was a huge thing. If you weren't cooperative with your tribe, you got kicked out and you died. So actually, humans, we evolved as social creatures, and we feel pain at social rejection because it's like almost like dying, right? It's literally like that. Like if you were the person that felt pain at social rejection, you stayed in the group, and so you survived, right? And if you didn't, you died. So literally that still remains with us. And so, sorry, what was your question? I'm going a bit off track.
What I'm saying is like the greed part, right?
Yeah.
Survival is also could be interpreted as like survive and taken to extreme.
Yeah.
Becomes a greed, right?
No, you're right. You're right. I guess what I'm getting at is there's different adaptations that humans achieve. And some people it's greed. Some people, their ancestors were greedy and they did well for themselves, and so it passes. That there's a sort of genetic predisposition there. I'm not saying it's not their fault. I'm sure there's environmental factors too, but some people, it's like it depends. I mean, there's people got successful through different ways throughout human history. You can't really, this is one of those things. I'm going to go back to being indecisive Andy again. This is one of those things you can't really tell. Yeah.
So the way I'm looking at this thing, right? The systems that we developed over time, right? For some reason, like the greedy, the narcissistic, the people that with the lower needs tend to rise to the top.
I think there's a bifurcated curve going on. Some of them, a small proportion of them, most of them fail out. Most of them fail out because they don't have the skills or the aptitude to compensate for their asocial behavior, right? And so they just get rejected by the group and they fall out, right? And they become problems in community and society, and there's all kinds of issues with antisocial behavior. But there's a small proportion of them that do have certain aptitudes and traits, whether that's ability to manipulate people, whether that's some kind of intelligence, some rise to the top. And what you're saying is right. You will find disproportionately at the top, you will find those people. But that doesn't mean there's a fallacy for this. I forget what the logical fallacy is called, but there's a fallacy for this, which is you see all the people at the top, and there's a large proportion of them that are this group, and you think, oh, the way to get to the top is to be that group. But it's not necessarily, because most of that group, the vast majority of the group, will never see that success. It is only a freak proportion of that group that has that trait and has something else that rises to that level, right? So it's a necessary but not sufficient condition to get to the top. Maybe it is necessary in some extent to have some kind of antisocial or behavior or some kind of greed, but it's not a sufficient condition. You need something else too. So, yeah.
Okay, so we kind of agree that this end up there. A lot of them end up there. And what you're saying is not only those kind of people end up there, but there are also some good quote unquote people that will, like, the way they serve the community or the society will end up as a net positive at the end of the day. I think again it exists on a distribution. Right? You have right. I don't think there's a lot of people that are very good on top. Right. I'm not going to claim that. I don't think most people. I think there's a lot of people who have good traits on the top. I think there's people that have good traits. It's just on a spectrum. It's on a spectrum. Spectrum is probably the better word to use. It's on a spectrum, right? And so you're going to have a lot of people. Definitely, you're going to have a high concentration of people at the top who have asocial traits or have very questionable motives. You're also going to have some people that are not quite like that, are more mixed. Maybe even some that are good, right? Genuinely have good motives. They just end up there. So we're attributing that to the way we built those structures that kind of like incentivize this kind of behavior.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is your belief in such a way that like you're saying, I cannot justify war. Therefore, these structures need to work in such a way that the war never will happen, right?
I think usually war is built about as a result of structures. That's my perspective.
Okay.
I think structures propagate the information that's needed to conduct war. And the structures occur from tribes, right? You have a tribe, and that tribe itself is a structure, and you build substructures, superstructures on top of that to justify what your tribe is doing. A media apparatus, like a mainstream media, and you build like a political class, and you have like cultural influencers and cultural heroes, and you have mythology and a history of who you are, right? Those are all structures that are used to justify war because this is us, and they're them, and they have bad structures, and we have good structures, right? I think actually the opposite, the way to oppose war, is to point out the flaws in those structures. I think the less structures you have, the more interconnected. In a specific sense, the more interconnected people are. Because if people are going into it with less of a view of like, okay, we are all this and they're all that, and they're going into it more, okay, we have something and they have something, but they're also people. Let's talk. You know what I mean? Then I think that's when you see less propulsion towards war. War is like a state. It's almost like a state of mind if you think about it. It is there's a literal term called war fever. It refers to the term at the beginning of every war, and when there's a war victory, when the population is like, we are amazing. We are amazing. We can do anything. We're great. And these guys suck. These guys suck. And we're gonna kick these guys' ass. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? It refers to that sort of dimension to it. And whenever you see something like that, my general tendency is to be very wary because, I'm not, that it is war fever. It's a kind of, I don't want to say psychosis. What's the term? It's like a social, it's a social illusion. It's a societal phenomenon. It's just a thing that grips people for a period of time, and it dissipates. It fades away. And once it fades away, it's sort of like getting drunk. It is like getting drunk. You think about getting drunk, right? You get on a high, you get drunk, you feel really good, and then you get hungover after, and you're like, oh my god, what did I just do, right? It is kind of like that. I don't want to be crass and compare war to drinking alcohol and getting hungover, but that is like, if you think about the mechanisms and how it works, that is kind of how war works, right? The population's excited at the beginning. And then the excitement wears off, and you start seeing the casualty count, and you start seeing dead bodies, and you start seeing your economy get worse, and then people start getting wary, and they start getting hungover, and they think, "Oh my God, is this really worth it? I just want to go home, man. I just want to go home." So,
okay,
yeah.
Would you be willing to develop a program or something like that to pursue that, to create a society that or a structure that would attract or be appealing to majority of the people, that would be structured in such a way for wars less likely to happen?
That is a super interesting question. I'd have to think. I'd have to think how I would design an application like that. That's super interesting, or some kind of organization that does that. There are already organizations that do a lot of good work, like the Red Cross, and there's a lot of aid organizations that do great work. I think what you'd have to do is you'd have to build an organization that really just kind of focuses on showing people how others in different societies and different areas than theirs live, how they live their lives. They're just ordinary people like you and I. Hey, maybe they do things a different way. Maybe they eat a certain way. Maybe they pray a certain way, a different way. Maybe they live a certain way. But at the end of the day, there's still people like this. Still talk. They still joke. They still laugh. They still cry. They have their moments, right? And maybe their government isn't, has its problems. Maybe something's off. But there's something valuable there to be learned too. Right? And I think if you can show that, I think journalism is a big aspect in that. With journalism, when used correctly, if William was here, I would tell him, journalism, when used correctly, can be a beautiful tool for that. And I don't think it has to be approached necessarily from an anti-war lens. I think it's enough to just show people that there's other people living different lives than you who are still just like you in so many ways. And when people see that community, that human community, then it almost becomes harder to justify in your head, why am I going to kill that person? Why am I going to pick up a gun and kill that person? It almost becomes harder to do it. And because you get caught up less in the tribal, we're separate. We are not the same. It's almost like an ego thing, right? There is an ego component to war, right? When you have an ego or when you have an ego about who you are, right? It almost distracts you from the fundamental, the fundamental nature that we're all connected, that we are all in some way the same. And so, not to sound very hippy-dippy, I don't want to get there. I understand this is going to sound that way. But, when you realize, hey, these guys have more similarities than we thought, you sort of break down that ego a little bit. It becomes more about, hey, we're not that different. And when you realize that, it becomes a lot easier to live and let live, to live in peace, to talk. Right?
And it also needs to be interesting.
Yes, I totally agree.
Because I feel like it's a lot more exciting when there's a conflict.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
You're right about that. People love wars for that reason. It's very exciting because what happens is usually if society feels like it's in decay or if people feel like they're not satisfied with the economy, what's the easiest way to distract people who are not satisfied with their economy or their lives?
Just kill an enemy.
Victory. We beat these bad guys. Look at us. Aren't we so great? Don't focus on your own problems at home. We beat these guys. If it works, it works extremely well. Right? In terms of a sense of national unity and spirit, right? Because it brings those tribal, that feeling, anyone who's been in any kind of tribal mentality knows this. Like if you again, I'm not comparing sports to war. Clearly not the same. But if you go to a sports match, right, it's very tribal, right? And when your side wins, oh my God, we're so great. We're amazing. Our side is amazing, right? And like that's just the way it operates. Like it operates as a way to distract people from their problems at home. That's the way it operates. Yeah.
Yeah. And the closing question of the day. If you were told right now,
Yeah.
in January, whatever, like let's say until next year, January, you need to make $1 million or you die, what would your approach be?
Oh, $1 million.
Or
Can I get some guy to... Maybe I'll do a Nigerian friend scam.
Mental exercise.
Yeah,
Like,
mental
what would
exercise. Now, between now and 1 year, I think there still remains a lot of opportunity in AI if it's used accurately.
you have 1 year.
1 year? No. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying if you can develop some kind of application in AI that is cheap, cost effective, and replaces some real, obviously way easier said than done, but if you can find that application, some real thing that's sucking up resources, because I don't think AI is very good at outpacing human work so far, human work quality. What it is good at is making things more cost effective. So you look at an area of drain, or you look at an area where there's drain and you can replace it effectively, cost effectively, at a relatively decent level. That's where I think the money's at. I also think if I wanted to make $1 million, it would be in healthcare. Because I think healthcare is going to be, okay, this is a bit more long-term. I know you asked for 1 year, but like healthcare over the next 20 years is going to become such a huge part of the economy because the population is aging everywhere. It's aging in Japan, it's aging in South Korea, it's aging here, right? And so when you're such an aging population, healthcare is just going to boom. And so as a result, unfortunately, because a lot of people are going to need end-of-life assistance and everything. And so as a result, I think any innovations in healthcare, however hard it is to break into that field, and boy, it is hard to break into healthcare, but however hard it is to break into healthcare, it is worth it, I think, because if you can break in, there's a lot of money you can make. So those are the two avenues I look at. If you ask me for third avenue, I don't know, just invest in stocks. I don't know. It's unfortunately not.
I mean, it's like the way I asked this question, it's not for you to give us an expert advice. It's the question is like, what would you do?
Okay. Oh, okay. That's a good thought. Actually, that is a good thought. Thanks for redirecting me. What would I do?
Because I heard these opinions. Like some people say I would have probably broken bad. Like I'm like, okay, that's interesting. That
broken. Wait, broken what?
Like this, there's the Breaking Bad. There's this series where this guy discovers that he has cancer and he becomes like this drug dealer and stuff like that and starts selling drugs.
That's crazy.
It's called Breaking Bad, right?
What? Oh, Breaking Bad, the show you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah, I've seen Breaking Bad.
Some people like when they say like 1 year or die, and the first thought that comes to their mind is like break bad. Because he doesn't see any other option.
Right. No, you're right. I'm laughing, but you're totally right. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, it's a very interesting mental exercise to pick other people's brain on that.
Wow.
Like, what would their approach be? Like, we currently live in this kind of society and like different kind of systems, and I feel like the abundance is out there. And it could be just a psychological or, I don't know, skill issue or some sort of an issue, but you hear a lot of stories that people make a lot of money like within short times periods, or there are some like systems like I don't know, stock trading, or like you said, AI application that made like skyrocketing jumps and made $1 million in a year or more, right?
Yeah.
So interesting to hear other people's, like you're saying, like maybe
you're totally right.
Yeah.
See, the things that I would be interested in doing are not quite the things that would make me $1 million in a year. So I say,
but let's say right now, like you die, $1 million. What would you do? Like
if I died with $1 million?
No, you will die in 1 year,
and you need to make $1 million.
And
I need to make $1 million.
Or like make 1 million or die in 1 year.
Oh, that's a crazy question. Oh man, you're really putting me on the spot. Oh God. Honestly, no, I'm not going to risk it all on the lottery. Gamble. Honestly, I just gamble.
You're gonna gamble.
I don't have faith that I could build a product that could make $1 million in a year. That's like, Honestly,
Yeah,
I
that's
might
a-
genuinely have better odds of just gambling at that point.
Interesting.
Genuinely. I would not win. I would not win the $1 million, but I might have better odds of that. If you ask me for a product, man, honestly, it would be some kind of AI startup.
Yeah.
That's where all the money's going. That's where, all the money's flowing there. I've got to try. And healthcare's so hard to break into. I would do something maybe in AI.
That's awesome.
I would just literally just do something in AI, pray. Just
Yeah.
pray. Pray something works out.
Yep. The answer is accepted.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Jay. It was a great
Yes.
conversation.
I love the conversation. Thank you so much for listening to me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Talk to you next time.
Talk to you later. Awesome. Awesome. I think that went well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, loved it. It's always great to come here and talk. I mean, always great to yap if you mean. If you know what I mean.